Yes, he does.
I suppose it's possible something like that could be things. They usually look a little higher, you know, what we are, you know, they're like a lot more shallow.
Like in a short period, in different spots. And
Right.
well, that's what they're all about that.
And, I'll talk to,
Right.
I'll talk to Todd, you know, Todd Schreier, and, see just the, you know, the number of, you
He's
know,
gonna do it, yes.
and see what's going on. They'll know.
I was having to think
Just having my head down. Is that if sometimes you get one, you get shifting of the lines that causes something else to happen at the same time, you know, but one, you know, it may not really be one thing, there are three instances, one kind of ripple, had a ripple effect. You know, because once something bursts, it'll actually shape that line, and then, so it's gonna cause some things like that. It's one of the points, so hopefully that's it for a while, but that's not uncommon, where you have a really bad one, over on the east side, and they're possibly one, they're Pacific. So it can really break down, you know, the cash water. So we fix the main break, you know, turn the water back on, back to 70. Right. We had 5. Now that was a bad line. When you have 3 like that, it may not be that the line is all bad, but it showed up some other weak spots in the shape of the line that it happened, you know, they popped up a little bit. But if it continues, then we would be on our.
Ready? All right, everybody can see?
Sure, no problem.
Yes. You turned it on, right?
I think that we should include anyone who was delinquent before the February billing cycle also. So if you were delinquent before February billing cycle, then we also, well, the reason, I'll explain it to me, but the reason I think that is because I helped two people contact me early on, helping them fill out one of the rent things or something. When I went through the application, one of the questions pertaining to utilities.
Yes.
Do you have it on?
And help. So basically, if you didn't get help with when you become for utilities, if it does become available for electric property taxes, you didn't show the labor, and they would.
All right.
Okay.
It's fine, if they qualify. You're understanding?
Okay, let's get this show on the road.
I think I understand. I think I understand, it's kind of.
I just want to emphasize you guys to speak slowly and speak into the microphone. You did a lot better job last time. And another thing is when we do have our legislative meeting, you don't have to stand, because you can hear your voice a lot better, so just stay seated. So let's start the committee meetings right now, and we'll start out with Mr. Hyde and Parks.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a meeting of City Properties, Parks and Recreation. It is Monday, July 13th, 6 p.m. at the Active Adult Center. All members present, what's noted on my sheet. We have no new requests for legislation. For miscellaneous discussion here, I have a report from our director that the dog park expansion to allow an area strictly for smaller dogs under 35 pounds is complete. Signs still need to be installed though. The expansion was made possible by a private donation. And through today, the Parks Department has distributed 5,410 lunches, 2,473 birdie bags, and 1,207 camp boxes. Aside from that, is there any miscellaneous discussion from the committee?
I have nothing.
No, sir. Any from the other members? Nope. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Second that, sir.
Thank you. And we are adjourned at 6:04.
Thank you. Next up is Public Welfare and Safety, Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to begin the Public Welfare and Safety Committee meeting. It's Monday, July 13th, 2020, in the Active Adult Center with all members of the committee present, as well as all other council members and others noted, with Mrs. Angela remote by phone. We have 2 requests for legislation. The first one is a letter from Chief Pursley requesting legislation to appropriate $979.30 from the unappropriated item of the general fund to the fire department operating budget. So in the letter that I received from Chief Pursley, it indicated that the transfer of the money was for the following items. The Barberton Fire Department received $810 donation from GBU Financial Life and its members to be used toward fire, rescue, and EMS supplies. $50.96 is due to the return of an item that was credited back to the city credit card. And $118.34 is due to miscellaneous fire department items that were turned in for scrap. Does anybody have any questions about this piece of legislation? Do I have a motion to call for it?
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Mr. Griffin,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Greer, all in favor?
Aye.
And it passes unanimously. The second request for legislation is a letter from Chief Morber requesting legislation to authorize the purchase of 2 police cruisers for the Ganley Ford. And, he is requesting, this is, as we all know, we discussed last year, this is a vital Farmington Police Department need. And these cruisers are in the 2020 budget. And he would like to have emergency wording, so that we can expedite this process and, get these new cruisers on the road. Does anybody have any questions about this piece of legislation? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. This will be 4 new vehicles this year, correct? If this passes? Or was this part of the 2 cruisers?
I don't have my budget book with me.
Didn't we authorize 2 new vehicles earlier?
I thought we authorized 2 at the end of the year.
Okay, maybe it was at the meeting.
Yeah,
Is that correct, Jeremy?
yeah, they purchased, 2 vehicles at the end of last year,
That's what I thought.
and then in the budget this year that was passed, there were 2 more vehicles, so.
So you're correct, that it was a total of 4, but
Just
I
not-
thought that we purchased 2 at the end of last year. Any other questions about this piece of legislation? Hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Mr. Greer, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Griffin, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It passes unanimously. Do we have anything for miscellaneous discussion for safety? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Griffin, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Greer, we are adjourned at 6:09.
Next up is Mr. Griffin with Rules, Marketing, and Development.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to call this meeting to order today, July 13th. We are meeting in the Active Adult Center. All members are present. And Ms. Angeloff is meeting us by remote. Tonight we have one piece of legislation to call for. A letter from Mr. Hunt requesting legislation to approve the FY 2020 CDBG Annual Action Plan Budget. I don't think everyone got a chance to read it.
I did not either. Yeah, this is my first time seeing this comments today. Mr. Britt, same thing for you?
This is the first time seeing it, I guess, is, Mr. Hunt here today.
They're gonna have a public hearing before the committee of the whole next week.
When is that?
Next week, before committee of the whole, they're gonna have a public hearing
Okay.
to address the council on that.
So we could just call for it tonight, right?
Yes. Well, you don't call for it, well, you're gonna do it in your committee, and next week you call for it at committee of the whole.
Do I have a motion to request this legislation?
I have a question,
Yes.
Mr. Chair. When is the fiscal year, 2020 CDBG budget due to the state?
The, for CDBG, there's really, I wouldn't say a due date, however, they do need to pass it so they can send off the approved action plan onto HUD.
Mr. Hunt's here. They're talking about the CDBG budget.
Okay. Yeah, we have as you can see, we developed a program. This is the 2020 budget. Everyone should have a copy. We have to have this approved by HUD. The proposal is very similar to last year, in fact. So carrying over 131,000 from previous years. That's not just last year, but other years where we may not have spent that whole portion amount. And yeah, if there's other questions, please ask. I'm here to address that.
The question was, when does it have to be into them?
August, I believe it's August 25th is the date here. You can ask for an extension. I prefer not to, but we can ask for an extension because of the COVID crisis.
And then I have one more question.
Okay, Mrs. Brett.
So we have to have, do we have to have 3 public hearings for the action plan or just one?
I think just one. I'm sorry, I think that there are 3, council will be one, we'll have one at planning commission, and we have another one scheduled, but before council, there only has to be one. Does that answer your question?
Yes, so I thought it was a total of 3, one at council, one at planning commission, and then one additional.
Yeah, and I forget where the one additional is, but that's accounted for right now.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Do we have any more discussion?
I did. Thank you. Mr. Hunt, this is the first time I'm seeing this, so I'm just trying to figure some things in my head here. Under the revolving loan funds with BCDC and NDS with 10,000 each, is that something that we feel we need to continue doing, or should that money be allocated elsewhere to other projects?
So this is my first year of going through this, but I do in fact feel like these are good allocation amounts to make. We have partnered with NDS in the past, as well as the Community Development Corporation. So, I may have a different opinion next year, but my first time through this, I think it's a good allocation to make this go on.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else, Mr. Draper?
No, sir.
Once.
Okay.
I'm sorry, like I said, this is the first time seeing this, so I'm trying to run through this here. Sidewalks in low-income area replaced or constructed 40,000. Do we have a targeted area where we're going to be spending that money? 40,000?
I do believe some of that money will be going, the mayor may correct me here, but I believe some of that money will be going to 4th Street. I know that there are some other areas of the city where their sidewalk is missing. And we're hoping to make sure that, it's not a bridge to nowhere, so to speak, that the sidewalk, continues, so. That's my quick study of it.
If no more discussion,
I just have one, this is also the first time I'm looking at this, so the revolving loan fund of 10,000, so basically they're just earning that money back and they're keeping it, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
So we aren't allocating anything additional, they're just receiving payments, and that's the estimated payments that they're receiving.
That's
Correct.
Yeah.
I have a motion to call for this legislation.
I'll make a motion to call for it.
Second.
Thank you. Second, Sean, call for it. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries. We do have concurrent legislation, I think everyone knows about it, absolutely, we talked about it last week. 5 pieces of legislation that we're gonna have 3 readings on, both charter amendments, to go to the voters in November. So we'll just be having first reading tonight. Do we have any discussion on that? Anyone want to say anything about that? Yes, Mr. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. I just wanted to point out to council members, if my memory served me correct, and it did, I asked Mrs. Fox to look for me. In 2005, the Charter Review Commission did propose putting the planning director and parks director as appointed by the mayor. It did make it to the ballot and it did fail, so.
Yes, Mrs. Fry.
I just asked Tom Martin last week about that particular piece of legislation. He said it's never been to the ballot, neither one of them.
Yes, it was. It was 2010 when Mayor Jeanette was on, running the city. And, he put that on there, it went on, but it was 2010, I believe.
It's 2005 for sure. The ordinance or the resolution is resolution, I think, 126 or 162.
It was 2005.
Okay, well, okay.
We did some, I asked her for some help, so it was too far back in the time online, so.
Okay.
So I just.
It
I'm
did
just- I'm
pass,
just-
it did pass.
It did not pass, no. So I'm just letting you know that's coming down with that.
Yes, Mr. Hyde.
Thank you. Off of what Mrs. Bevick said, I did do 2010, 2015, looked into Mrs. Fox's help, and the same two, I want to say were in either 2000, I think 2015. They did not make it out of committee. There was no motion made for one and no second made for the other.
May I speak, please?
Yes, Mrs. Angel.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. The 2005 and 2010, I'm aware of that, and I think the consensus from most of the people were that they didn't want to give the mayor, total, activity with all of with all of the departments. They felt that, that the mayor should have total control of everything. So this is why, it came up in 2005 and 2010 again, because, it was controversial about that. But, when I was in the mayor's office, I remember distinctly what the conversation was. It was that the mayor should have total control of every department. That's why you have a parks commission, and that's why you have a planning commission. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. D'Angelo. Yes, John.
Yes, thanks for the review, Commission, guys. I will also be supporting this decision to go on ballot. The reason I said no last week was I wanted 3 readings, and we are doing 3 readings for this, correct?
Correct.
So with that case, I will be supporting, and I think the mayor should have the right to decide who the planning director is and all that stuff, because it's under his wings, and he's supposed to be in charge of that, so I'll be supporting that. I think any mayor, current mayor or future mayor, should have the right to see who's working with him. The business, the owner will pick the manager of the company to be with them. So in that case, I will be supporting the new board's commission to go forward with this.
Thank you, Mr. Jaber. One thing about it will go on the November ballot, and people will have a chance to vote on it again.
Right.
So that'll be, their decision. And, you know. If there isn't any more discussion, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Hyde.
I'll second that.
We are adjourned at 6:01.
Next up is utilities with Mrs. Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. President. City utilities, this is July 13th. We're in the Active Adult Center. All members are present and others noted. We have a request for legislation to authorize the appropriation of $565,000 from the unappropriated item of the water fund to the water fund capital budget. This will be referred to finance. This goes way back to a memorandum of understanding with Norton. We had asked for $40,000 a while back. This is a very large water line, and Norton could not apply for the loan because they don't own the water. They don't have a water department, and so we had to apply for the loan for them. But all bills will be paid by Norton, but we carry the paperwork. And so this has been moving forward, and Mr. Weaver has any other information if you need it. Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you, Chair. Which water line is it?
It's on 261 Akron Wadsworth Road in North. It's a considerable project. In fact, I was surprised he was biting off that much. It'll likely be done in sections, but this design loan is for the entire stretch. How long was that? It was,
It's a few miles.
several miles, and it'll be at least a 12-inch line.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Mrs. Devitt?
So this amount is just the design amount?
That's, yes, planning and design. Construction of a line that long, it'll be several $1 million.
Make sure I mention again that this will all be paid by Norton. Yes, Mrs. Devitt?
I was just wondering, because I don't believe any of this portion is in Barberton. So are we not incurring any cost at all for this project, or will we have some portion of cost incurred? I know that this amount here is all incurred by Norton as discussed, but.
Yeah, according to the memorandum of understanding that was done passed by both city councils, Marlin shall be under no obligation to construct the project without further agreement between the parties. And, I know of no plans for us to construct that line.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion to call for it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
On the current legislation, Mrs. DeBevick was mentioning to me that, if you wanted to explain what you talked to Lisa Miller about so that we might all understand it better?
Yes, I will do my best.
Okay, thank
So
you.
I spoke with, Mrs. Miller today, because I wanted to be sure, I know last week I indicated some concerns, about the ramifications of whether or not, and I know we aren't turning any utilities off, so I know we are in compliance with federal regulations, but, and I know that it was indicated that, the, intention is just for sewer. So when I was discussing it with Mrs. Miller, just to make sure that we were in compliance with the COVID rules, she said that if the intention is for it just to be sewer, then it should read that way, and we should amend it. She also made a suggestion, and I think it was a good suggestion, that perhaps we could include not just sewer, people with outstanding sewer, but also anybody who was behind, for the portion before COVID began. So maybe the end of and I don't know how much work that creates for you, but the end of the billing cycle in February.
Yeah, this is more than just sewer. We are doing sewer only accounts, because those we can't shut off. And we're doing delinquent finals. Now, delinquent finals can include water as well. Those are final bills that the property is owned by the same person. Most of those would be rental units. So they would have a past tenant that may have owed a few $100, was never paid, that we would assess those. So it would include some water. It's just, it isn't as extensive, nowhere near as what we would typically do on an assessment.
Right, she just mentioned that it would be probably in the best interest to spell out in the piece of legislation exactly what we are doing. She said that if we wanted to call her about that, we could. I just wanted to make mention, another reason that I called her today to ask her about this is I didn't speak with, I apologize. I received a couple of phone calls and I helped two people fill out an application for the Summit County program where if your house payment's behind or your rent is behind, and you were under a certain income, they could possibly provide assistance from the CARES Act. I believe that launched, they called me like Tuesday, so I'm not sure when it launched. So, in the process of helping them fill it out, one of the final questions, or almost near the end of the program, it indicated that more than likely there will be assistance in the near future for utilities. If you are delinquent or in need of help with, check the following utilities. And water was one of them. So my concern about, I think if we spell it out in the ordinance, then if anything gets assessed to someone who is delinquent by accident as a result of COVID, they wouldn't be eligible for any additional funding through the CARES Act because it would appear as if there was no delinquency on the account. So, because it would already be assessed to the property taxes, so they wouldn't be eligible for assistance. That was just one of the questions on the application. Do I know if it's gonna happen? No, I don't know. But that was just part of my thought process.
My question is,
These are not active accounts. They are properties that are on, so they would be delinquent finals.
Right,
Where someone has moved on.
Right, no, I completely understand that, but Mrs. Miller indicated that if it's for sewer only and delinquent finals, that we need to put that in the ordinance. If that is our intention,
That's certainly my goal.
and that we could amend it. So I don't know if you want, I mean, we can have Renee call her, if you want to.
Utilities of delinquent water.
Mrs. Colburn,
Yes,
Mrs. Colburn,
yes, Mrs. Angela.
I would like to, ask Mr. Weaver, on your water utility bill, the first thing that's noted is water, sewer, garbage, the stormwater, and then the light. So say you owe $60 and you pay $20 of your bill. Where does that $20 go first? What gets paid on this bill, what gets paid first, and then what ends up being delinquent?
Yes, right, that's even a better question for Jeremy. There's a order that those are paid. First 20 would go to trash for the time.
Okay, so we pay the trash first.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mr. Weaver's correct, that the first portion of a person's payment will always go to garbage, since that's a service that we have to pay for outside of the city. From
Okay,
there, it gets basically split evenly between the rest of the fund. So it will get split evenly between water, sewer, and store. I would have to take a look to see the priorities, but I would have to double check on the priorities, but I'm pretty sure it's split evenly amongst the funds. If not, then there's a priority, and I want to say the priority will go water, sewer, and then storm.
okay. Because it used to always be the trash service that always came out first, because we have a contract with them, so that has to be paid. And I just didn't know along the lines what that paid, because I'm thinking if you're behind in your sewer, then you'd be behind in your water bill.
Not necessarily if you only have a sewer, if you have
Then
a
you
sewer
only have a
only.
sewer.
So the question we have here at hand is, do we want to add that wording to this that says
I'm
delinquent
sorry,
sewer?
can you repeat that?
We're asking whether we want to add wording to this ordinance that states delinquent sewer and final water, final
Delinquent
shut-offs,
finals,
Delinquent final bills.
delinquent finals. Is that what we want to add to this?
Yes,
Okay.
that's what we're doing.
Yeah, she just
We've got
recommended
20.
that if that's what we're doing, we should.
Can we
word it.
add that, Renee?
Yeah, I guess the other question is do you want it passed tonight or can it go to readings?
As long as I have it, this month, I'm fine. Because, the actual assessment will take place, we have to have those numbers for Summit County in September, early September.
So I
I
mean,
just want to be in compliance, so do I need the wording on it tonight?
well, you're gonna have to do it in committee and then we'll do it afterwards and then next week's, if we don't pass it tonight, we can amend it on the floor. Either way, we have to amend it on the floor. Well, no, we don't have to. Once I read it, it has to be amended. It's gonna have to be amended on the floor, whether you vote for it tonight or in 2 weeks is your guys' call.
Let's amend it on the floor tonight. We'll write the words in.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
And vote on it tonight?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay,
So what do we need it to say? We need, I make a motion, I want to figure out what it has to say before I make the motion.
Right. I agree. We need it to say assessment delinquent final water.
For unpaid, delinquent sewer and final bills, correct? Instead of, for unpaid utility services.
Yeah, you could say final, utility bills, more than 60 days past due.
Okay,
And then also just delinquent sewer only accounts, more than 60 days past due.
okay, so I would like to make a motion.
Yes,
We're gonna do that later.
Oh, okay.
so we don't have to do it in committee. We
You have to
just
do
have-
it good.
We do it, okay.
So I would like to make a motion to amend, ordinance number 74, 2020 to read an ordinance authorizing and directing the city of Barberton to certify to the Summit County Auditor special assessments against certain properties for final utility bills more than 60 days past due and sewer delinquencies more than 60
Yeah,
days
sewer
past due.
only accounts.
And sewer only accounts. Accounts more than 60 days past due
Correct. That's correct.
and will include charges through August 21st, 2020 and declaring an emergency.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Do we have any miscellaneous discussion? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
We are adjourned at 6:37.
Okay, next up is finance and personnel with Mrs. Fry.
Okay, put this on first. All right, it is Monday, July the 13th. We are in the Active Adult Center. It is 6:37, and we are starting the meeting for the Finance and Personnel. All members of the committee are present with Mrs. Angela remotely calling in. All members of council are here and guests as noted on my sheet. We don't have any new legislation for this evening, however, we do have quite a few pieces on the agenda. The first piece of legislation on the agenda is ordinance number 71, 2020, and this is an appropriation for the fire department. It is in the amount of $8,750 from the unappropriated item of the fire capital levy to the fire department capital budget. And this money is a reimbursement to the fire department from the CARES Act for a disinfecting system, which was a COVID-19 related purchase. Any questions? Okay, the second piece of legislation is ordinance number 73, 2020. This is also an appropriation for stormwater. This is an ordinance appropriating $594,571.25 from the unappropriated item of the FEMA fund to the stormwater capital budget of the FEMA fund and declaring an emergency. This particular appropriation is in regard to the purchase of the homes on 14th Street in the flood area. Any questions about this? Okay, the next piece of legislation is resolution number 80, 2020. This is the County of Summit COVID-19 Local Government Payroll Support Grant Program. This piece of legislation is for the monies that we could receive in regard to the payroll support grant program. And I talked to Jeremy about this today because there are some gray areas. Because what we could claim in the way of payroll is monies that are not included, not accounted for in the City of Barberton's most recently approved budget as of March 27th, 2020. He explained to me that they are going to be meeting, Summit County is, and then they are going to send the actual facts about what can and cannot be reimbursed for the payroll. It's basically for safety forces, and this will be for the dates beginning March 1st, 2020 and ending December 30th, 2020. There is a firm named Maximus that will be assisting with the definitions and the guidance. And if you have anything else to add to that, Mr. Flaker, please feel free to do so.
I do want to touch base. I did check in with Summit County. The question Mrs. Bevick had at last Finance Committee was, she was wondering if we could use some of the CARES Act money to pay our portion of the health district. I reached out to them. They said no, just for the main fact it was already a contracted service with them. And then they are also going to be using the CARES Act money to pay for their payroll portion that they have to pay their Summit County employees out of the health district.
Okay.
So since it was a contracted service already, they said the CARES Act couldn't be used for it. And as you said, Mrs. Fry, it's still a gray area regarding the whole, whether we can use it on police and fire wages or not. Just for the main fact, as you stated in the resolution, it says it has to be something above and beyond our current budget. Well, that's where a lot of the debate's coming in, because there's the argument that since public safety is substantially dedicated, that it can kind of overrule that as it was budgeted, or for costs that weren't budgeted in your budget workbook. So that's the gray area, that's the big holdup. I do know Summit County, or not Summit County, the state auditors did meet with the national auditors, along with the treasury. They were supposed to meet on Wednesday of last week. In the email that I received, it said that once the state auditors had that meeting with the federal auditors, they were going to digest the information before letting it known to all the entities on how the CARES Act money can be used. And as you noted, Mrs. Fry, that Summit County is contracting with Maximus, who they basically specialize in making sure that the organizations are following the grant procedure guidelines that are set forth, make sure they're being followed correctly. So they're seeking their guidance as well to try to get this nailed down to a T. That way, come next year, if we say, okay, we can use this for payroll, they don't want a case to come back next year. Auditors say, no, it can't be used for payroll, and then all these cities, townships, villages have to pay back that money. They don't want that to occur. So they're making sure all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and make sure no one has to pay back any of this money next year.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? All right, the next piece of legislation on the agenda for this evening is ordinance number 81, 2020, create new fund, Summit County COVID-19 PSGP fund. This is an ordinance, authorizing the Director of Finance to create a new fund, the Summit County COVID-19 PSGP Fund. And, this is necessary to be compliant and also to receive any funds that we do get from Summit County. And this is also in conjunction with the local government payroll support grant program funds. Does anyone have any questions about this piece of legislation? No? Okay. The last piece of legislation that we're calling for tonight is ordinance number 83, 2020. This is to authorize payment to Kenmore Construction Company. This is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance to pay an invoice to Kenmore Construction Company in the amount of $40,693.54 for the emergency repairs to a Class 8-inch sanitary sewer on Miami Avenue and declaring an emergency. This particular repair, I believe, happened in February, Denny, of 2019.
Yeah, it was last year.
Yes,
It
and
took quite a while to get the bill, actually.
yeah, and then when we did get the bill, somehow it didn't get paid. So now we have it, the PO got, what did you just say?
Closed out.
Yeah, closed out. It got closed out. PO was closed out, so they never got paid. And since it is over $3,000, now it has to come to council for us to approve it. Do I have any questions about this piece of legislation? No? Okay. All right. Also, we have the finance report for the month of May ready, and if Mr. Laker would be so kind as to give it to us.
First thing I want to note is on the very first page, for the health insurance analysis, it says May 2020, but it's actually June 2020. That was just an oversight there. Starting off with the health insurance fund, the monthly revenues for the month of June were about $414,000. Expenditures about $394,000, leaving the unexpended fund balance at $813,453. The unexpended fund balance went up about $20,000 from last month. And moving on to the income tax analysis. For the month of June, we had the estimate at just about $967,000. We actually collected $1,283,000. Now, that actual payment consists of several advancements. We had the advancement for the month of May at the beginning of June. We also had a second advancement in the middle of June for the month of April. And then at the very end of June, or end of May, they sent another, or no, at the end of June, they sent another advancement for the month of June. So you have 3 advancements here, all merging the past 3 months together, April, May, and June, consisting of that almost 1.3 million. So they still don't have the actual information to me. I plan on reaching out to them again, middle part of this week, end of this week, regarding the actuals for the month of April. For the year to date, our estimate, we had just a little under 6 million. Our actuals coming in at about 5.9 million. We're below our estimate by $91,000. I'm hoping that with income tax due in a couple more days, and once we start seeing more actuals from CCA, hopefully we will be out of the under category of our estimate. It looks favorable right now, but until I can get those actuals, I'm not going to guarantee that we're going to get above our estimate right now. We did transfer $1 million from the income tax fund to the general fund. It did leave about $343,000 in the income tax fund. I don't want to transfer everything right now, just for the main fact, since CCA is sending these advancements, they haven't been withholding their service fees, so I don't want to cut that fund short in case of they come back and say we either have to pay a refund to someone, if it's a case where we have to pay their service fees, or they might have gave us too much in advancements. I don't want to zero out that completely. So I want to leave a little bit of a balance in there until I can start getting some of these actuals and feel comfortable about getting that money transferred over. We still need to transfer about a little under 5.4 million to the general fund. So that's going to break out to being, we need to transfer about $900,000 for the rest of the year to meet our transfer that was approved by the budget. Moving on to the statement of cash receipts and disbursements, we have a few funds in the negative. But before we get into that, I just want to point out, you will see a new fund on this spreadsheet under special revenue funds. It's Fund 245, it's the local coronavirus relief fund. That is the CARES Act money we received from the state. We did receive a little over $998,000 from the state for the CARES Act. Now moving on to the funds in the negative. The first fund is the CDBG fund, Fund 250. As I always state every month, that is the HUD grant, so it's reimbursable. So once we spend the money, they'll reimburse us for it. On the next page, the next fund in the negative is the Norton Sanitary Sewer Construction Fund. That's a fund for the sewer construction projects that are going on in Norton that we're going to get reimbursed from loans. It's another case just like HUD where we have to pay for the expenses, and then OWBA or OTWC, whoever we have the loan through, will reimburse us for those expenses. The next fund in the negative this month is Fund 522, the Water Bond Retirement Fund. That will get cleared up this month. We just need to do the transfer that was in the budget for this year of $622,000. We had the OWBA debt service come out at the end of June. So we just need to do that transfer. That will get that back up into a positive number. The next fund in the negative is Fund 660, the Health Insurance Fund. That is in the negative due to the amount of outstanding encumbrances. The outstanding encumbrances went down about $327,000. That encumbrance consists of our monthly payment to Summit County for health insurance. That will continue to go down roughly about $300,000 every month. So that fund should be getting out of the negative here in the next, I would say 4 to 5 months will be out of the negative. The next fund in the negative is the Internal Cost Allocation Fund. This is where our postage, our fuel, and everything is paid out of. So there's the outstanding encumbrance of $60,000, which is making this fund in the negative. Once we charge back to the different departments for fuel costs, postage, workers' comp, and everything, that fund will slowly be out of the negative once those encumbrances are used up. Moving on to the last 3 months of activity. For the general fund, the unencumbered cash balance went up by about $100,000. That is due to an increase in the amount of transfers. We transferred $600,000 last month. We transferred $1 million this past month. For special revenue funds, that is up by about 1.2 million from last month. The increase is because we're carrying a little bit more of a balance in the income tax fund because of the advancements. And second, we also received the CARES Act money of almost $1 million. The enterprise funds went down about $500,000. Like I previously stated, we did have the OWBA debt service come out this past month, so that's why the enterprise funds went down some. All other funds, you will see the unencumbered cash balance be a negative $333,000 compared to the previous month of $709,000. That negative number will keep going down as we pay Summit County's healthcare costs and we charge back to the different departments for that cost. Comparing in the general fund, the unencumbered cash balance is just under 3.4 million. It's up because of the disbursements the disbursements are down so far this year, and we have more net transfers into the general fund this year compared to this time last year. The special revenue funds is up by about 2 million. The big increase comes from the CARES Act. Enterprise funds, the unencumbered cash balance is down by about 800,000 because of the disbursements are higher this year because we paid down more debt service in stormwater and sewer and that. And all other funds looks like it's down, but if you look at the cash balance as of June 30th, you will see that the all other funds is up by only about $40,000. You really can't you can look at the unencumbered cash balance, but comparing it from last year to this year, where we're now taking out the TO for our health insurance, where we didn't do that last year, so. And that is all I have.
Thank you very much. Did anybody have any questions for Mrs. Flaker? No, thank you, Jeremy. Nice job. Okay, having no questions, do I have a motion to call for the acceptance of the June 2020 finance report?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion made by Mrs. DeBevick. Do I have a second?
I'll say.
Second by Mr. Medges. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, is there any miscellaneous discussion for finance for this evening? All right, since nobody's raising their hands, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Motion made by Mrs. DeBevick to adjourn and seconded by Mr. Medges, and we are adjourned at 6:56.
Okay, we'll take a short break, and then we'll go right into legislative meeting.
It's never been right, okay. I didn't think it would be like this.
There's also on the agenda.
Okay, so you're just reading. Oh, good.
Board resolution passed.
Because that's what, the only because I asked him, because I knew that they had proposed this several times, and I said to them, did this ever get to the ballot? And no, and that's the only reason I hired, because he was on the committee. I think
I didn't follow the board elections, and yeah, it doesn't matter, I just.
I'm like 90% sure that it didn't.
I thought it was
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're gonna.
You know what?
We're working. This is,
Are you gonna tell us? Good idea. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I had read
Oh, you were. Well, they. The order just so like. Yes. I don't know. I don't.
Right.
They want, and they want to.
Oh, yeah, I had to do
Yes, first, first thing.
Are you gonna instruct me or do I have to make a motion?
I'm gonna read it.
Okay, gotcha. We're gonna start before 7:30.
Oh, very good.
We're gonna have a treat. I like it up. We did last week. It's like, it stays like. Yeah.
I love it.
Morning, when I walked home, well, last night when I was and at 1:38. Oh, the lawn, it's not that close. Right. It wasn't.
Should be something up on.
Then I looked for, I'm like, probably true. So then I could find my iPhone.
You work out.
Well, I looked at it, it wasn't. It was up.
It'll drag.
And then my sister. It's not bad. So I thought, oh, I was like,
That's fine.
get a job.
Well,
I made that. Well, I just. I've had those stuff so
Um,
I have like 3 verses.
okay,
Really?
Well, you know, I didn't know.
I've asked them 100 times.
This, so, yeah, Ron.
But we don't know it. Well, okay. So I asked them.
Just right on the.
I've
Do you think
asked
it's because of COVID and all the kids on?
Lisa, I don't know if I have. I don't know my problem.
No, it's for.
But I called.
Spray it.
No,
now. He was saying something about the
You want to do anything?
I love it. I put it on my motorcycle too. On my.
I'm at it.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, so
I'm
you're
the second.
Fine, fine. No, I probably shouldn't have anything to do with it. Not that I'm probably gonna get to use it anyway. Well, because we can't get enough, our house out of it.
Yeah.
Why don't you add on tomorrow, put on a mother-in-law suite or father-in-law suite?
I
You'll still be in.
Burn your eyes?
Yeah. Well,
That's why I have chills.
don't do it in your car either.
Yeah.
I know.
I don't know what.
You know, they run together.
All I know is that they wanted $100,000, $109,000. So I take that.
Already working.
I was over there. And I didn't have a day in 50 years. You have to be invited.
I saw
I think it.
Yeah, you almost had that.
It's all right.
It's like that, you almost had that.
Well, I have to tell you. Something literally, she finally signed it.
You just go. I'm a huge doctor.
And they're like, have you got the application? I just said, we already have it on file, and you posted it, and clearly you're nothing to do on like 9 to 10 o'clock. And, so, anyway, they signed the lease. It's been like 6 weeks, we got driven Youngstown like 7 times. They were looking at, suburbs, but this is actually in Youngstown, the drive to the actual house.
Did you guys try Sylvania?
No, we tried Boardman.
Okay, we're gonna get started here in a minute. Just a reminder, guys can stay seated, so you're closer to the mic. Okay, this is a regular legislative meeting of Barberton City Council. Today is Monday, July 13th, 2020. It's at 7:10 p.m. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance, followed by the invocation by Mr. Gray.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Lord, watch over us, our residents and first responders in our current pandemic. Let us understand each other and always move forward. Help us see and act on the needs of our community, and always remember 22.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Mrs. Angela. Mrs. Angela. Mrs. Angela. Are you there, Nina? Mrs. Silver.
Here.
Mrs. DeBevick. Here. Mrs. Fry.
Here.
Mr. Greer.
Present.
Mr. Griffin.
Here.
Mr. Heidi.
Here.
Mr. Jaber.
Here.
Renee, I'm sorry, I had you on, so I'm here.
Okay.
Oh, good, good. Okay, because we're starting earlier tonight, Council Rule 103 states that the regular and committee of the whole meetings shall be at 7:30 p.m. And since we are starting earlier than this, we will need to invoke Council Rule 702. Need a motion. This is the best.
Thank you, Mr. President. I make a motion to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 103.
And Mr. Hyde.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion for suspension.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mr. DeBevick and second by Mr. Hyde to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 103. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay, approval of the minutes of the regular legislative meeting. Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion for the approval of the minutes of the regular legislative meeting held on Monday, June 22nd, 2020, as presented.
Thank you. And Mr. Hyde.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to approve the minutes of the legislative meeting.
It was moved by Mr. DeBevick and second by Mr. Hyde to approve the minutes of the regular legislative meeting held on Monday, June 22nd, 2020, as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are adopted. Approval of the minutes of the special legislative meeting. Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion for the approval of the minutes of the special legislative meeting held on Monday, July 6th, 2020, as presented.
Thank you. And Mr. Hyde.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the approval of the minutes of the special legislative meeting.
Thank you. It was moved by Mrs. DeBevick and second by Mr. Hyde to approve the minutes of the special legislative meeting held on Monday, July 6, 2020, as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are adopted. Acceptance of the finance report. Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the acceptance of the Finance Department report for the month of June 2020 as presented.
And Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Fry's motion.
Thank you. It was moved by Mrs. Fry and second by Mrs. DeBevick to approve the Finance Department's report for the month of July 2020 as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Finance report is accepted. Petitions and claims.
They're enough.
Matters requested.
They've been passed out.
Thank you. Citizens addressing council.
I cannot receive them.
Okay, first readings of ordinances and resolutions.
Ordinance number 71, 2020, presented by Mrs. Fry, title appropriation fire department. An ordinance appropriating $8,750 from the unappropriated item of the fire capital levy to fire department capital budget and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule is required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
And Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I second Mrs. Fry's motion on suspension.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Fry and second by Mrs. DeBevick to suspend the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mrs. Fry,
Yes.
Mrs. Angela,
Yes.
Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber,
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn.
Yes,
Motion to adopt, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 71, 2020.
And Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Fry's motion on adoption.
Motion was made by Mrs. Fry and second by Mrs. DeBevick to adopt ordinance number 71, 2020. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mrs. Coburn,
yes,
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber,
Yes.
Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mrs. Angela,
Yes.
Mrs. Fry,
Yes.
Mr. Greer.
Yes.
Resolution number 72, 2020, presented by Mr. Greer, titled Preliminary Participatory Legislation, Worcester Road North, Norton Avenue. A resolution of the Council of the City of Arlington giving consent to the Director of the Ohio Department of Transportation for the improvement of Worcester Road North and Norton Avenue, bid number 108372, and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend, Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule is required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you, and Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. I second the motion to suspend.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mr. Greer, second by Mrs. Angela to suspend the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Jaber,
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Yes.
Mrs. Fry,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
yes,
Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mrs. Angela,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Motion to adopt, Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of resolution number 72-2020.
Thank you, and Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. I second the motion to adopt as presented.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mr. Greer and second by Mrs. Angela to adopt resolution number 72, 2020. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mrs. Angela,
Yes.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
yes,
Mrs. Fry,
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber.
Yes.
Ordinance number 73, 2020, presented by Mrs. Coburn, titled Appropriation Stormwater. An ordinance appropriating $594,571.25 from the unappropriated items of the FEMA fund to the stormwater capital budget of the FEMA fund and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule is required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
And Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Fry's motion on suspension.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Fry, second by Mrs. DeBevick to suspend the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. Fry,
Yes.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
I have to abstain,
Mrs. DeBevick,
Yes.
Mrs. Angela,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber.
Yes.
Motion to adopt, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 73, 2020.
And Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Fry's motion on adoption.
Motion was made by Mrs. Fry and second by Mrs. DeBevick to adopt ordinance number 73, 2020. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Jaber,
Yes.
Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mrs. Angela,
Yes.
Mrs. Devitt,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
I have to abstain.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mrs. Frye.
Yes.
In the Utilities Committee, they voted to amend the following ordinance to read as follows. Ordinance number 74, 2020, presented by Mrs. Coburn, titled Utilities Assessment for Liquid Water. An ordinance authorizing and directing the city of Arlington to certify to the Summit County Auditor special assessments against certain properties for unpaid final utility bills, which will include accounts more than 60 days past due, and sewer-only accounts more than 60 days past due, and will include charges through August 21st, 2020, and declared an emergency.
Motion to suspend, Mrs. Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rules as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you, and Mrs. Frye.
Thank you, Mr. President. I second Mrs. Coburn's motion to suspend.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Coburn, second by Mrs. Frye to suspend the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Hyden,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
Yes.
Mrs. Devitt,
Yes.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber,
Yes.
Mrs. Frye,
Yes.
Mrs. Angela.
Yes.
Motion to adopt, Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 74, 2020.
Thank you, and Mrs. Frye.
Thank you, Mr. President. I second Mrs. Coburn's motion to adopt ordinance number 74, 2020.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Coburn, second by Mrs. Frye to adopt ordinance 74, 2020. Are there any remarks? Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank the committee for making those amendments to that, to further clarify the ordinance 75-2020. 74, dash 2020.
Anyone else? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mrs. Angela,
Yes.
Mrs. Frye,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mrs. Devitt,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
Yes.
Mr. Hyden.
Yes.
Ordinance number 75, 2020, presented by all council, sponsored by Mr. Griffin, titled Proposed Charter Amendment, Department of Public Service. An ordinance to provide for an election on a proposed charter amendment for the city of Arlington regarding the elimination of the Division of Engineering and for giving notice thereof and declaring an emergency. First reading only. Ordinance number 76, 2020, presented by all of council, sponsored by Mr. Griffin, titled Proposed Charter Amendment, Planning Commission, Planning Director. An ordinance to provide for an election on a proposed charter amendment for the city of Arlington regarding the appointment of the Director of Planning and for giving notice thereof and declaring an emergency. It's also first reading only. Ordinance number 77, 2020, presented by all council, sponsored by Mr. Griffin, titled Proposed Charter Amendment, Parks and Recreation Commission Director. An ordinance to provide for an election on a proposed charter amendment for the city of Arlington regarding the appointment of the Director of Parks and Recreation and for giving notice thereof and declaring an emergency. Ordinance number 78, 2020, presented by all council, sponsored by Mr. Griffin, titled Proposed Charter Amendment of the Commissions of Boards. An ordinance to provide for an election on a proposed charter amendment for the city of Arlington regarding the elimination of several boards that are no longer relevant to the current operations of the city and for giving notice thereof and declaring an emergency. Ordinance number 79, 2020, presented by all council, sponsored by Mr. Griffin, titled Proposed Charter Amendment, Charter Review Commission. An ordinance to provide for an election on a proposed charter amendment for the city of Arlington regarding the appointment date of the Charter Review Commission and for giving notice thereof and declaring an emergency. Resolution number 80, 2020, presented by Mrs. Frye, titled County Summit COVID-19 Local Government Payroll Support Grant Program. A resolution requesting the city of Arlington receive a share of funds from the county COVID local government payroll support grant program funds and declared an emergency.
Motion to suspend, Mrs. Frye.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
And Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Fry's motion on suspension.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Fry, second by Mrs. DeBevick to suspend the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes.
Mr. Heidi?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Angela?
Yes,
Mrs. Coburn?
yes,
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Mr. Greer?
Yes. Motion to adopt, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of resolution number 80, 2020.
Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Fry's motion on adoption.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Fry, second by Mrs. DeBevick to adopt resolution number 80, 2020. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Greer?
Yes.
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn?
yes,
Mrs. Angela?
yes,
Mrs. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Heidi?
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes.
Ordinance number 81, 2020, presented by Mrs. Fry, titled Create New Fund, Summit County COVID-19 PSGP Fund. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance to create a new fund, the Summit County COVID-19 PSGP Fund, and declare an emergency.
Motion to suspend, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. And Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Fry's motion on suspension.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Fry, second by Mrs. DeBevick to suspend the rule as required by section 5.1 of the Barberton City Charter. Excuse me, 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. Angela?
yes,
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Mr. Greer?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn?
yes,
Mrs. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes.
Mr. Heidi?
Yes.
Motion to adopt, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 81, 2020.
Thank you. And Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Fry's motion on adoption.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Fry, second by Mrs. DeBevick to adopt ordinance number 81, 2020. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Heidi?
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes.
Mrs. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn?
yes,
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Greer?
Yes.
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Mrs. Angela?
yes,
Ordinance number 83, 2020, presented by Mrs. Fry, titled Authorized Payment to Kenmore Construction Company. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance to pay an invoice to Kenmore Construction Company in the amount of $40,693.54 for the emergency repairs to a collapsed 8-inch sanitary sewer on Miami Avenue and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule is required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
And Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to second Mrs. Fry's motion on suspension.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Fry, second by Mrs. DeBevick to suspend the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Angela?
yes,
Mr. Heidi?
Yes.
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Mrs. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Greer?
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn?
yes,
Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes.
Motion to adopt, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 83, 2020.
And Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Fry's motion on adoption.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Fry, second by Mrs. DeBevick to adopt ordinance number 83, 2020. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn?
yes,
Mr. Greer?
Yes.
Mrs. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Mr. Heidi?
Yes.
Mrs. Angela?
yes,
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
And the first reading.
Second reading of ordinances and resolutions. Third reading of ordinances and resolutions. Appointments,
I have nothing.
miscellaneous and unfinished business.
I have a question. What time is the special meeting that we have on August 3rd?
Good question. Any suggestions? 7:30? It's a legislative meeting, so why don't we come in, how's everybody feel at 7:00?
That's fine.
That's fine.
7, fine.
Okay,
10 o'clock?
7:00. Anything else? Okay. Anything else from the good of the body? Department heads, anybody? Present? Okay.
There's been a couple people asking about what's going on in Kmart Plaza. Have you heard any rumors?
I haven't heard anything.
Have you heard anything?
I'm gonna be able to add,
Okay.
and it's not from city-related business, but, the owner of, the shopping center there, LRC, they are, the gentleman is ready to retire that owns the company. They disbanded their research and development, put that part of their company, and they're looking to, sell all of their shopping centers and properties that they own. They are in the process of closing. And, I believe that the particular Kmart building Kmart is paying the lease through until January 1st. So they're being paid rent because that was part of the lease agreement. So that's the update that I know.
I have a cool ask for these people, business guys and especially guys just walking through and stuff. So that's good.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
don't know any details other than that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, reading, go ahead.
Tomorrow evening, Tavi Lewinsky is going to have a, town hall meeting with some of the downtown merchants, on her, Facebook page.
Okay, is that actually meeting now?
It's a Facebook Live page.
Oh, okay. Okay, what time does that start?
7:00,
7:00?
6:00.
I think it was 6 o'clock.
6:00, yes, it's 6:00.
All right.
People will be able to ask questions on the Facebook page of the people that are talking.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, communications from the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very busy at the city building. Your administration is working very hard. We've got a webinar this week on economic development, which is really changing, and the speculation of how it's changing and what this is going to look like after COVID is all over the board. Development has kind of been suspended for a lot of different industries. What's retail going to look like? What's restaurants going to look like? Been talk of maybe fast food restaurants go to drive-through only to kind of protect employees and customers. So there's a lot of talk out there. And so these webinars are very important as everyone is kind of speculating and looking at what, when we come out of this, who's going to be on top and ready to go for the new norm as it pertains to economic development. So we'll be on that call. We have 4 meetings set up with 4 different businesses in town, looking to expand, doing some BRB visits with them. I'm trying to set up meetings with 4 other businesses who have contacted my office through some organizations, Akron Urban League, Akron Score, and a few other organizations. So hopefully we can get those set up very quickly. Also have meetings with BCBC this week for the monthly meeting, and also the NEPCO, which is a planning organization, 4 times. If you belong to. Also, there's a stormwater meeting through Summit County Task Force, which I sit on. So even though it's been a dry spell and we haven't had any flooding, this is still a top priority, not only here in Barberton, but countywide and also regionally with the governor's task force. Appreciate council passing ordinance Resolution 72/2020. We've been continue to work with ODOT on the AMAX money and projects that are coming through the city in the next few years. The paving, actual construction doesn't happen for a year or two. They start the process now. So we're working with ODOT, getting everything done so we can get those projects off without a hitch. If you have any questions, we really can't have this stuff stalled. So I appreciate the passage tonight. But we've got some great projects, a lot of great things coming through, money flowing. 80% of Uncle Sam is paying for these projects over the next few years. So it's very important that we get this legislation through. So if you have any questions, please contact us. And then lastly, Councilwoman Coburn said, our state representative, Talia Blask, is having a Facebook Live town hall meeting tomorrow at 6 p.m. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, with nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion that we adjourn.
And Mr. Hyder.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll second the motion to adjourn.
Thank you. It's moved by Mr. DeBevick and seconded by Mr. Hyder that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 7:37.
Yeah.